What's up guys, Mike here, the Detroit Borg, and when it comes to tech, I'm constantly updating and replacing everything from routers to computers to phones, but the Thunderbolt display is easily the oldest piece of tech I've been using up until recently. So needless to say, a replacement has been long overdue, and it has finally arrived in the form of LG's 27-inch UltraFine 5K display. So instead of designing and manufacturing their own displays, Apple has partnered with LG to take the same 5K panel from their iMac and build it into a standalone monitor. This is primarily marketed toward the new MacBook Pros, but it does work with other Macs. But if you want to take advantage of the 5K resolution, you definitely have to use one of the new MacBook Pros. Now normally this monitor retails for $1299, but it's on sale through March for $974, which is quite a good deal. And because the price is so attractive right now, why buy one when you can buy two at twice the price? And that's what I've done here, and that's because the 15-inch MacBook Pro can drive two 5K displays, and I really wanted to test that out. So getting to the unboxing, it's pretty clear right away that this is a bit different than the other LG displays I've reviewed recently. We have this very white glossy box with a carrying handle, so you can see that this is designed specifically to be picked up in an Apple store. So the first thing I need to do here is cut into the tape and pop the tabs to get into the top of the box. So the first thing I have here is a big piece of styrofoam that I have to sort of wiggle out of the way. So once we remove this big block of styrofoam, you can see the monitor sitting in the bottom of the box with its stand already installed. But the first thing I have to do here is remove the accessory box, and of course we're going to get to that in just a moment. Next up, let's go ahead and lift the monitor out of the box along with its styrofoam tray. So once it's on the desk, I can go ahead and sort of raise up the monitor to wiggle the styrofoam off, and you can see it's wrapped in lots of plastic. So once I go ahead and remove some of the tape along the side, which is kind of messy here, you can go ahead and lift up the envelope protecting the entire display. The very large base here is also protected with an envelope, and we can go ahead and remove that. Now the base is all metal, although the rest of the monitor is plastic. But again, it's a very nice sturdy base that adds some weight to the bottom of the monitor. Next up, we have the accessory box, which also includes our power cable. And the great thing here is that the power supply is integrated into the display, which isn't always the case with other LG displays. Of course, we also get some paperwork with an explanation of the included accessories and some warranty information. We also get a Visa mount adapter, which replaces the stand on the back of the monitor, which I'll get to in just a moment. So if you want to do a Visa mount, it's pretty easy to convert this over. And lastly, we get a high-speed Thunderbolt 3 cable, which can output 5K from the MacBook Pro to this monitor. So the overall look of this monitor is pretty professional. It's very simple, all plastic with a very simple design. It doesn't have a lot of parts that creak, it doesn't have a lot of different finishes, it's just a smooth black plastic finish. It actually looks a lot better in person than it does in images. In images, it kind of looks cheap, but in person, it definitely has a nice, simple, and high-quality look to it. Now, like many LG displays, this one also has an articulating stand that allows you to raise it up and tilt the monitor. Now, the articulation is nicely weighted, so it's very smooth. Now, the range of motion is very similar to a Thunderbolt display, but of course, the height adjustment is new, and it's quite nice to have. Now, we don't get a vertical orientation like you might get on some other LG displays, but you can tilt the monitor left and right, which more often than not drives me a little nuts just because I'm constantly trying to get it straight. The back of the display is very clean and simple. You won't find any labels back here. In fact, they're all hidden behind the stand's mount, and that's pretty easy to remove. All you have to do is click this lever and the stand pops off, and you can go ahead and install the Visa mount if you prefer. But if you remove that, you can see the labeling that's hidden back here. You can also see that there is some ventilation built in back here to keep the monitor cool. Now, just like the Thunderbolt display it's replacing, it does have many of the same features already built in, including a camera, built-in stereo speakers, microphones, and additional ports that turn the monitor into a hub for peripherals. And just like a Thunderbolt display, you won't find any hardware buttons, so the only way to turn on the monitor or adjust the settings is to attach a computer. This also means it automatically turns off or goes to sleep when your computer goes to sleep. And thanks to Thunderbolt 3, all you have to do is connect one cable for both the display output and charging. And because this display supports 85 watts, it's specifically designed to fully charge and power a 15-inch MacBook Pro. But when it comes to I/O on the monitor, it's important to note that only one port is Thunderbolt 3, which you'll see circled. This is the only port you want to use when connecting your monitor to your Mac. Now, the other three are downstream USB 3 ports with reduced bandwidth and power, so they can't replace the faster Thunderbolt 3 ports on your MacBook Pro. You might also notice that all of the ports are USB Type-C connectors, so you can't escape the dongle life by using this monitor. Now, the other thing that stuck out to me right away when I first saw this monitor was the large forehead bezel, which doesn't look quite as out of balance in person as it does in photos, but it does integrate a full 1080p front-facing camera along with microphones, an ambient light sensor, and an LED indicator. And if you're keeping track, you'll know that 1080p is better than the 720p FaceTime cameras used by other high-end Macs. Also similar to the iMac and Thunderbolt displays, we have a set of stereo speakers that are built into the bottom edge and face downward and reflect off your desk. For the most part, they are very loud and clear, but they sound much thinner and not quite as rich and immersive as the speakers on a Thunderbolt display or an iMac. Now, I've actually been using the latest 5K iMac for over a year now, and the display here is nearly indistinguishable with similar brightness at around 500 nits. The glass on the display is glossy with improved anti-reflective characteristics over the Thunderbolt display, but not as good as the latest 5K iMac or even the MacBook Pro. So when it comes to specs, they're pretty much identical to the 5K display on the 5K iMac. We have a resolution of 5120 by 2880, that's good for 217 ppi. This is a 27-inch IPS LED backlit display with a 60Hz refresh rate. More importantly, this is a 10-bit DCI-P3 display, just like the 5K iMac and just like the 15-inch MacBook Pro, 13-inch MacBook Pro, 12-inch MacBook, and even the iPhone. So they all have the same DCI-P3 color gamut. But still, with such a bright display, glare is really not an issue here. Now, like the 5K iMac display, there does tend to be some light shifting off axis, so you'll see the blacks tend to get washed out toward the corners of the display, but it's nothing uncommon for LCD monitors or TVs, and overall the LED backlight here is very even with no signs of edge leaking or splotchiness. Now, when it comes to using the screen resolution, it's identical to that of a 5K iMac. By default, it's set to 2560 by 1440, which is scaled to the resolution of the 5K screen to increase sharpness and the overall smoothness of the display, so pixels virtually disappear. We do get several other scales to choose from, but none of them really take you to the direct 5K resolution. However, within certain apps like Final Cut Pro, you can access the native resolution of the monitor for such things as previewing 4K video in Final Cut Pro 10. Now, this means I can edit 4K videos with a full-size preview of my project while still preserving enough room for my editor. Now, using a second or even third display with your MacBook Pro means you have additional desk space to work with, and you can drag and drop windows to the additional monitors and it scales instantly. Alternatively, you can close the lid and use only the displays and attach a keyboard or mouse to turn your MacBook Pro into a desktop, which works very well. Currently, there are a few limitations to using these displays. For one thing, macOS currently does not support adaptive brightness on these monitors despite the presence of the sensors, and adjusting the brightness on the external display remains something of a hassle. If you're in desktop mode, you can use the keys on your attached keyboard to adjust brightness, just like you would with a desktop computer. But with a laptop open, you'll have to go directly to the display settings to access the brightness for the monitor, or you'll need to tap and hold the control button while tapping the brightness keys, but unfortunately this is pretty laggy. Now, fundamentally, this monitor gets the basics right. The display and features are consistent with other Mac products and carries on most of the functionality from the Thunderbolt display. Although fairly attractive and relatively well built, the design and materials are clearly third-party, which might be disappointing to Apple faithful who would prefer to see an Apple design on their desk instead of LG, especially at this price. And since this monitor is Apple's face to the user, I'm not sure this is a true replacement, but it certainly gets the job done and remains the best option for expanding the capabilities of your MacBook Pro. Alright guys, hope you enjoyed this look at the 5K UltraFine display from LG. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up to let me know, and I'll see you again in the next video.